To a lot of people, July feels like the tail end of the gardening year. They pull out the tired, worn-out plants, pick the last of the summer crop, and settle in to wait for spring. If that sounds like your July, you may be walking right past one of the most valuable planting windows the whole year has to offer. Most gardeners assume the garden has already done its job by now. The experienced ones know better. July isn't the finish line. It's the starting gun for the best harvest of the year. The reason is simple. Seeds dropped into warm July soil come up fast. And once fall settles in and the temperature starts sliding down, that's when the good part begins. To defend themselves against the cold, a lot of vegetables turn their stored starch into sugar. Carrots sweeten up. Kale loses its bite. Cabbage grows tighter and crisper. Brussels sprouts trade that slightly harsh edge for something nutty and rich. A few crops don't just tolerate frost. Those first cold nights are exactly what push them to their best flavor. So while the neighbors have hung up their tools and written off the season, your beds can keep producing. And not only through the fall. With some of these crops, you'll still be harvesting after the first snow starts to fall. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 12 of the best vegetables to plant in July. A few will hand you a harvest in a matter of weeks. Others go in the ground now, precisely so they hit their peak in fall. And some actually get sweeter the colder it gets. If you've ever figured July was too late to start anything worthwhile, the back half of the growing season is about to look very different to you. Let's get into it. First up, beans. Beans might be the most misunderstood thing you can put in the ground in July. Most people sow them once in spring, get one big pick, and that's the end of it. Seasoned growers don't treat them that way at all. To them, beans are a crop you plant again and again, a fresh short row every 7 to 10 days or so. That one habit turns a single big harvest into a steady stream. Instead of everything ripening on the same weekend, you've always got young, crisp pods ready to pick right up until the first frost. Here's the part people miss. July is one of the best times of the whole year to grow them. Beans love warm soil. Within the right range, the warmer the ground, the faster the seeds germinate. Beans sown in spring often sit for ages in cold soil before they push through. Beans sown in July almost seem to jump out of the ground. There's one trick that saves a lot of failed rows, though. In the middle of summer, the top layer of soil dries out within hours under the sun. Plant your seeds too shallow, and they can lose their moisture before they ever sprout. So go a little deeper, around 2 inches down. At that depth, the soil stays damp far more steadily, and the seeds get the water they need to come up quickly and grow strong. For pole beans, Blue Lake is about as reliable as they come. If you'd rather grow bush beans, Jade, Top Crop, or Strike are all solid choices. Most of these start producing in roughly 45 to 65 days, which is early enough to finish the crop before real cold arrives. Just keep one thing in mind. Beans have almost no frost tolerance. A single early cold snap can wipe out the whole planting. So look up your average first frost date and count back about 65 days. That's the latest point to sow your final round of beans for the year. Get the timing right, and you won't just get one harvest. You'll be pulling fresh beans for weeks, right as everyone else's green crops are starting to run out. Second on the list, cucumbers. And think of this one as a second chance for a crop that failed. If your early cucumbers got chewed up by beetles, knocked down by wilt, or just grew weak and faded away, July gives you a clean restart. And sometimes that second planting turns out even better than the first. The reason is that the strongest waves of pests and disease tend to hit the cucumbers you planted early in spring. By midsummer, that pressure has usually eased off. Sow a fresh batch in July, and the plants start out in warm, clean soil and grow in a hurry. With direct seeding, plenty of varieties begin producing in about 50 to 60 days. If your garden is tight on space, go with a bush variety. They stay compact, they're easier to manage, and they still produce well. If you've got a trellis, vining cucumbers are a great option. The fruits hang down off the trellis so they stay cleaner, grow straighter, and are easier to spot and pick. But there's one thing that decides the entire flavor of a cucumber, and that's water. Cucumbers carry big leaves, and big leaves lose moisture fast on a hot day. When the plant dries out while it's setting fruit, the cucumbers turn bitter. That bitterness isn't bad luck. It's the plant telling you it ran short on water at exactly the wrong moment. So, if you're growing cucumbers in July, water deeply and keep the moisture steady. Don't just splash the surface and let the soil bake dry again an hour later. What the plant wants is consistent moisture down around the roots, especially while it's flowering and forming fruit. If you want cucumbers for pickling, homemade pickles is a very good variety. For fresh eating, Sumter or Dasher. 2 are dependable. And if space is limited, bushcrop gives you a neater, more compact planting. The one thing to remember with July cucumbers is this: the plants grow fast, but they react just as fast to water stress. If they dry out badly even once while they're carrying fruit, you'll taste it in every single cucumber. Keep the moisture steady, harvest often, and this second planting can end up being one of the most rewarding crops of late summer. Number 3, zucchini, and one plant will give you more than you bargained for. If there's a single crop famous for producing almost too much, it's this one. Put in just 1 or 2 plants, and before long you're handing zucchini to neighbors, to friends, to anyone who'll take it, and hunting for new ways to cook the rest. But here's the real reason July is such a good time to plant it. By midsummer, a lot of the squash that went in earlier is already fading. Some plants are dusted white with powdery mildew. Others have been hit by the squash vine borer, a pest that tunnels straight into the stem and cuts off the flow of water and nutrients. The plant looks green and healthy one day, and the next it wilts and collapses. A fresh July planting lets you skip right past that first big wave of damage. The soil is still warm enough for the plants to root quickly, and in about 50 to 60 days, the first fruits are ready. From there, it keeps producing until real cold shows up. That said, you can't just plant it and walk away. By late summer, another problem appears: powdery mildew. That white fungal coating spreads quickly in warm, humid weather, and zucchini is one of the crops it loves most. The good news is, you can head it off with one simple move. Don't crowd the plants. Give them a bit more room so air can move freely between the leaves. When the foliage dries quickly after rain or watering, mildew has a much harder time taking hold. People often plant close together, thinking they're making better use of space. But with zucchini, crowding just brings disease on sooner and cuts your total harvest. For a dependable green zucchini, Black Beauty is a classic. If you prefer yellow squash, early summer crookneck is one a lot of gardeners have had good luck with. And if you're tired of those little prickles on the stems scratching your arms every time you pick, Spineless Beauty is worth a look, since the stems are nearly thornless. Don't wait for the fruits to get huge before you harvest. Pick them young. Smaller ones are more tender, sweeter, and have fewer seeds, and every time you pick, you nudge the plant into making more flowers and more fruit. With zucchini, the more consistently you harvest, the more it gives back. That's the secret behind how just a couple of plants can feed a family for weeks. Fourth is carrots, a vegetable you don't really understand until after the first frost. If the only carrots you've eaten came out of a summer garden, you honestly haven't met their best flavor yet. Carrots don't peak on hot, sunny days. They peak once the weather starts to cool. That's why so many gardeners always keep a bed aside to sow in July. Planted now, the roots build up quickly in the still warm soil. Then, the cool days of fall roll in, and that's where it gets interesting. To protect itself from the cold, the plant converts more of the starch in its roots into natural sugar. The result is that carrots pulled in late fall are usually far sweeter, deeper in flavor, and crisper than anything you dig in midsummer. That's not your imagination. It's a real biological response. Growing carrots in mid-July does come with one hurdle a lot of people trip over: germination. The seeds are tiny and the seedlings are delicate, and in midsummer, the top layer of soil can dry out after just a few hours of sun. If that layer dries out even once before the seeds sprout, your row comes up thin or doesn't come up at all. There's a simple fix that works remarkably well. After you sow, cover the bed with about 2 inches of dry straw. It holds moisture, keeps the soil surface cool, and shields the seeds from the sun. Once the seedlings start pushing up, gently pull the straw off to the side. One more trick is worth using too. Mix the carrot seed with a little dry sand before sowing. It spreads those tiny seeds out more evenly and keeps too many plants from sprouting on top of one another, which means less thinning down the road. Once the seedlings are up, thin them to about 1 inch apart so the roots have room to grow straight and even. For sweetness, Nantes is always near the top of the list. If you like small carrots, you can pull early. Little Fingers fits the bill. And if you're after long, good-looking, meaty roots, Tendersweet is one to try. The best thing about a July carrot crop is that you're in no rush to harvest. The roots can sit in the ground right through the first light frosts, and in a lot of cases, the longer they stay, the sweeter they get. That's why experienced gardeners like to say the best carrot isn't the biggest one. It's the one that got chilled by fall at exactly the right moment. Fifth, kale, where the colder it gets, the better it tastes. Most vegetables are afraid of frost. Kale is the exact opposite. It's one of the few leafy greens where those first cold spells don't hurt the quality at all. They improve it. That's why a lot of gardeners don't bother rushing kale into the ground in early spring. They wait until mid-July. The plants grow through the last of the warm weather, then mature just as temperatures start dropping, and that's when kale really shows what it's got. As the cold moves in, the plant starts turning the starch stored in its leaves into natural sugar to protect itself from freezing. After a few frosts, the leaves come out softer, sweeter, and almost free of any bitterness. If you've ever tried kale in the middle of summer and found it tough, strong, or bitter, don't decide you dislike kale. There's a good chance you just ate it at the wrong time of year. The sweet spot for sowing runs from mid-July to mid-August. That gives the plant enough time to build a strong root system before fall, and after that, it keeps right on growing as the weather cools. The harvest is flexible too. If you want tender young leaves for raw eating or salads, you're looking at roughly 30 to 45 days. If you'd rather have bigger leaves for sautéing, soups, or hot dishes, just let the plant keep growing. And you don't take the whole plant at once. Pick the older leaves from the bottom, and the top keeps making new ones, so a single plant can produce for weeks, even months. For a reliable, good quality variety, lacinato, sometimes called dinosaur kale, is always a favorite. Blue curled Scotch and Premier are excellent too, both strong growers and productive. The great thing about kale is that you're barely racing the clock. It handles cold beautifully, so even when most of the garden has packed it in for the year, kale stays green, and every frost that passes makes it taste a little better. That's why so many gardeners rank it among the most worthwhile crops in the whole fall garden. Number 6. Broccoli. And the key is this: don't grow it for a summer harvest. Grow it for fall. A lot of people make the mistake of trying to bring broccoli in during midsummer, but broccoli has never been a crop that likes heat. It's a cool season vegetable through and through, which is exactly why July is the right time to start. It sounds a little backwards, sowing during some of the hottest days of the year, but the point isn't to harvest right away. The point is to have the plants mature just as the weather cools, because cool temperatures are what decide the quality. If the heads form during hot weather, they come out small, loose, more likely to taste bitter, and quick to flower. When the plant heads up in the cool of fall instead, the heads turn out tighter, denser, and much better in flavor. That's why experienced gardeners always count backward from their expected first frost date, usually starting about 10 to 12 weeks ahead, so the plant has enough time to grow. There is one snag when you start broccoli in July. The seeds don't like overly hot soil. High temperatures can make them germinate painfully slowly, or just sit there and do nothing. If you're in the middle of a hot stretch, the easiest solution is to start the seeds in trays or somewhere cooler, then transplant the seedlings out once they're sturdy. That usually gives you a far better success rate than sowing straight into the garden. If you want to stretch out the harvest, think carefully about variety as well. Traditional types form one big central head, and once you cut that, the plant is more or less finished. Sprouting kinds like broccolini or asparabroc work completely differently. After you cut the main head, they keep throwing out small side shoots along the stem, so you can harvest again and again for weeks, and the total yield off a single plant ends up much higher. If you prefer traditional heading broccoli, Green Magic, Pac-Man, and Avenger are all steady performers. Most start producing in about 50 to 70 days, depending on the variety. The most important thing with July broccoli isn't speed, it's patience. You're planting for fall, and if the plant matures right on time in cool weather, the payoff is big, tight, crisp, sweet heads that leave anything forced through the summer heat far behind. 7th, cabbage. Plant it once and eat it all winter. There's a reason cabbage has been a garden staple for hundreds of years, and it isn't only that it's easy to grow. Very few vegetables store as well. Harvest firm, healthy heads in late fall, and you can keep them for months. July is a great time to start a new crop, because unlike all the heat-loving vegetables, cabbage grows best as the weather cools. Force it to form heads in the heat, and things go wrong fast. The heads can swell too quickly and split open, or the plant bolts and flowers before it ever makes a solid head, and you end up with a near total loss. Plant in July, and the plant spends the rest of summer building leaves and roots. Then, when temperatures fall in early autumn, it starts forming those tight, firm, crisp heads. On top of that, the first light frost actually improves the flavor. Like the other brassicas, cabbage responds to cold by losing some of its sharpness and building up natural sugar, which is why late-season cabbage is often sweeter and crisper than anything you'd cut in midsummer. If you want cabbage that keeps for a long time after harvest, choose varieties that form firm heads. The tighter the head, the longer it lasts in storage. After harvesting, keep the heads somewhere cool, around 32 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and under the right conditions, they'll hold good quality for months. That's exactly why cabbage is considered one of the most valuable crops in the fall garden. A single harvest doesn't just cover a few meals, it can help feed you through the whole winter. If you're looking for varieties to put in now, Champion and Top Bunch are both very reliable. Just remember one rule: don't try to make cabbage mature in hot weather. Let the fall do the work. Those cool days at the end of the season are when this vegetable reaches its best. Number 8. Beets. One sowing for 2 harvests. If there's a vegetable that quietly gives you more than you expect, it's the beet. Most people grow them for the roots, but a single sowing actually hands you 2 harvests. Even while the plants are young, you can start picking the tender leaves and eating them. They're soft, nutritious, and work like any other leafy green, and all the while the root down below keeps growing with barely any setback. That's something not many root crops can offer, and July is a fine time to start. The soil is still warm, so the plants root fast and get off to a strong start. Then, as the cool days of fall arrive, the roots begin packing away more natural sugar. Just like carrots, beets sweeten as the temperature drops, which is why the ones you pull late in the season tend to have a richer, more pleasant flavor. There's one thing about beet seed that a lot of people don't realize, though. What you're holding and calling a single beet seed is actually a cluster of seeds, and that cluster is wrapped in natural compounds that slow germination down. Sow it straight into dry midsummer soil, and the plants tend to come up patchy, thick in some spots, and bare in others. Luckily, one easy step makes a big difference. Soak the seeds in water for about 24 hours before you sow. That softens the outer coating and rinses away some of those germination inhibitors, so you get faster, more even sprouting. Once the seedlings are up, thin them to about 2 inches apart, and don't toss what you pull, because those young leaves are perfectly edible. For a steady, easy, high-quality variety, Detroit Dark Red is one a lot of gardeners reach for, known for round roots, deep red color, sweetness, and strong performance as a fall crop. Another nice thing about beets is that you don't have to rush the harvest. The plants shrug off light frosts and hold their quality, and like most root crops, the cold actually makes them sweeter. Sometimes shifting your planting date by just a few weeks gives you beets of an entirely different caliber, and that's exactly why so many people always keep a little corner of the July garden set aside for them. 9th, Brussels sprouts, where the longer you wait, the more they reward you. If any crop on this list really tests a gardener's patience, it's this one. Brussels sprouts are not a fast harvest. You won't see results in a few weeks. The plant needs somewhere around 80 to 100 days to fully develop, and that's precisely why July matters so much. Start too late and the cold arrives before the little sprouts along the stem have had time to form, leaving you with a tall stalk and hardly anything to show for all your effort. Plant at the right time, though, and it's absolutely worth it. Unlike most vegetables, Brussels sprouts don't usually reach their best flavor before the cold comes. The real magic only happens after the first frost. To defend itself, the plant converts its stored starch into natural sugar, and sprouts that once tasted a bit strong turn sweeter, nuttier, and far more flavorful. That's why a lot of gardeners deliberately leave the plant standing for a while after frost instead of harvesting straight away. Every cold spell nudges the flavor up another notch. If you want a good crop, though, you have to give the plants room. This is one of the bigger vegetables in the garden, so space each one about 18 to 24 inches apart for enough light and airflow. They also want soil that stays evenly moist. The plants spend months building those little buds along the stem, and if they hit water stress during that stretch, your yield can drop off sharply. When it comes to varieties, Long Island, Gustus, Tebe, and Dagan are all reliable for a midsummer planting. New growers often get impatient with this crop. They watch everything else get harvested, while their Brussels sprouts still look like tall stalks topped with big leaves. Don't lose heart too early. This is a crop that rewards the gardener who knows how to wait. As the weather cools, those sprouts gradually fill in along the stem, and that's the moment you understand why so many people rank Brussels sprouts among the best vegetables in the fall garden. Number 10. Lettuce. And don't let the heat fool you. If one vegetable makes people give up on July planting entirely, it's lettuce. Everyone knows it likes cool weather, so plenty of gardeners assume midsummer is a lost cause. That's not quite true. You can absolutely harvest beautiful green lettuce even when it's hot out. You just have to understand what the plant actually needs. The first thing to know is that lettuce isn't afraid of July. It's afraid of too much heat. Leave it exposed to a long hot stretch and it bolts in a hurry, the leaves turn bitter, and the quality falls off fast. So rather than fighting the weather, give the plants a cooler spot to sit in. A shade cloth with 50 to 70% coverage makes a huge difference. No shade cloth? Use the shade of taller plants instead, like the north side of a corn bed or the space under your tomato trellises. The second thing a lot of people don't know is written right into the seed. Unlike most vegetables, lettuce seed needs light to germinate, so you don't want to bury it deep. Cover it with only a thin layer of soil, about a 1/4 inch, just enough to hold it in place. Plant it deep the way you would beans or corn, and the seed can simply sit there and refuse to sprout. That's one of the most common mistakes people make sowing lettuce in midsummer. Once you've handled the temperature and the seeding depth, the last piece is choosing the right variety. Heat-tolerant types like Buttercrunch, Summertime, Skyphos, or Salanova Butterhead keep growing in conditions where ordinary lettuce would already be bolting, which is exactly why they're the go-to for midsummer sowing. It's fair to say lettuce asks for a little more care than most. You need shade, you need to sow it correctly, and you need to pick the right variety. But nail those 3 things, and the reward is worth it. While plenty of people are convinced it's too late, your garden can go right on producing crisp, fresh green leaves for weeks. 11th, radishes, where you can start harvesting in just a few weeks. If you want the fastest possible result from a July sowing, radishes are hard to beat. While your other crops are still busy putting on leaves or building roots, radishes can already be ready to pull. Depending on the variety, you might need only about 25 to 40 days from sowing to your first roots, and that's why they always earn a spot in the late-season garden. But speed isn't their only trick. The nice thing about radishes is that you don't sow them all at once. Put in a short row, wait a week or 2, then sow another. Keep that going through July and August, and you'll always have fresh radishes coming, instead of one giant crop landing all at the same time. It's one of the simplest ways there is to stretch out a harvest, and plenty of gardeners do it every single year. Once you're into late July, you've got another option too: winter radishes, like daikon. These take longer to size up, but in exchange they grow right through the cool weather of fall and form large roots that store far longer. And here's something not everyone knows. If the weather turns too hot and your radish roots just won't fill out properly, don't yank the whole plant in frustration. Let it keep growing. When it flowers, it produces green seed pods, and those young pods are completely edible, crisp, mildly spicy, and delicious raw or tossed into a stir-fry. The flowers pull in bees and other pollinators too. So what looks like a failed crop can hand you a completely different kind of harvest. If you're after varieties to sow in July, German Giant, Fireball, and Perfecto are all worth trying. One more thing in the radish's favor: you don't have to fuss much as the weather cools. The plants just keep growing until the ground truly freezes. It's honestly one of the easiest crops for anyone who wants to extend the season, because even when things don't go to plan, this one usually still gives you something back. And sometimes those forgiving crops are the ones that make gardening so much more enjoyable. And number 12, Swiss chard, the vegetable that's almost impossible to fail with. We're closing the list with one of the most dependable things you can sow in July. If I had to name the single easiest crop on this whole list, I'd pick Swiss chard. Not because it grows the fastest, and not because it out-yields everything else, but because it just keeps quietly growing no matter what the weather does. While a lot of leafy greens start to struggle in the heat, chard keeps growing. When the cold arrives late in the season, chard keeps growing. That's genuinely rare for a leafy green. Its knack for handling both ends of the temperature scale makes it a perfect fit for the late-season garden. Compare it to the usual greens. Lettuce bolts fast in the heat, and spinach throws up a seed stalk and turns bitter after just a few warm spells. Chard barely notices. It simply keeps pushing new leaves up from the center, which is why so many gardeners count it among the most reliable plants they grow. You don't harvest the whole plant at once either. Just take the larger outer leaves, and the center keeps producing new ones. Come back a few days later and harvest again, and that cycle repeats week after week almost all through fall. If you like tender young leaves for salad, you can start picking after about 30 days. If you want bigger leaves for sautéing, soups, or cooking down like spinach, give the plant around 40 to 60 days. And chard isn't loved just for its flavor. It's a good-looking plant. Colorful stemmed types like bright lights can turn a garden bed into a splash of red, yellow, orange, and pink. So from a distance, the bed can look more like a patch of flowers than a row of vegetables. If yield is your priority, Ford Hook Giant is an excellent pick. If you want color and beauty, bright lights or ruby red bring a lot more to the eye. When you sow, set the seeds about an inch deep, and once the seedlings are up, thin them to roughly 6 inches apart so each plant has the room to grow big, healthy leaves. What I like most about Swiss chard is this. It's not the kind of vegetable that stuns you with one enormous harvest after a few weeks. Instead, it quietly hands you basket after basket of fresh greens, over and over. Long after most other plants have finished for the year, chard keeps growing, keeps making leaves, and keeps holding its ground in the garden. Maybe that's why it earned the last spot on today's list. After all the crops that need the right timing, the right temperature, or that first frost to reach their peak, Swiss chard reminds you of something pretty simple. Sometimes the most worthwhile crop isn't the one that gives the biggest harvest. It's the one that's always there, steadily growing right alongside you until the season truly winds down. So that's 12 of the best vegetables to plant in July. Some you can harvest in just a few weeks. Some will stay with you all the way through fall. And some only reach their finest flavor after that first frost has come and gone. But every one of them shares a single truth. July isn't the end of the gardening season. It's the moment to start a brand new crop, one with fewer pests, gentler weather, and a harvest that can stretch all the way to the close of the year. I hope this list helps you pick the right crops for your own garden. If you found it useful, go ahead and hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next gardening video. And I'd genuinely love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching. I wish you a healthy, thriving garden and a truly abundant harvest, and I'll see you in the next video.